Picture strolling along a sidewalk and passing someone who seems nearly human, yet distinctly different. A broader nose, a slanted forehead, a more robust physique. You might overhear them discussing an intricate engineering project in an unfamiliar accent. If Neanderthals had persisted alongside us, this would be an everyday scene. Two intelligent human species coexisting on the same planet, in the same cities, under the same governments. Our systems would grapple with unprecedented challenges in accommodating another human species. The question isn't merely whether they could survive, but whether we could live together harmoniously. Most people outside Africa carry 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA today. Yet, this genetic legacy provides no blueprint for sharing authority in the present. The real difficulty would begin with something as fundamental as child development. Music. What happens when a Neanderthal child and a human child share the same classroom? The answer exposes how deeply our education system would falter. Both children would have similar brain sizes, but their cognitive processes would differ profoundly. The human child would grasp abstract ideas swiftly, while the Neanderthal child would shine in tasks demanding exceptional precision and spatial reasoning. Educators would struggle to teach two fundamentally distinct types of intelligence with methods tailored for just one. The cognitive disparities are more significant than you might think. Neanderthals had elongated skulls with a feature scientists call an occipital bun, a protrusion at the back of the head that altered brain region organization. CT scans indicate Neanderthals had smaller cerebellar areas compared to their larger, bun-shaped brain cases, impacting motor skills, language processing, and social capabilities. Recent research also highlights a single gene variation affecting frontal lobe neuron production, suggesting a cognitive advantage for modern humans. That's quite a learning gap. Neanderthal children required much more time to achieve full brain maturation. An 8-year-old Neanderthal would have only reached about 87% of their adult brain size, while a human child the same age would be at 95%. This means Neanderthal kids would need extended learning periods and completely different educational approaches. They'd likely struggle with rapid-fire lesson plans but dominate in subjects requiring careful observation and hands-on, precision work. What's really wild is how this would split the job market. Neanderthals had larger brain areas dedicated to vision and movement. Plus, they created incredibly sophisticated tools using something called the Levallois technique. Like sculpting a precise domino array from a single stone, they struck flakes with planning others rarely matched. In other words, they'd probably dominate engineering, architecture, precision manufacturing, and any field requiring detailed spatial reasoning. Meanwhile, humans would likely corner the market on innovation, social networking, marketing, and creative industries where quick thinking and abstract reasoning matter most. The workplace segregation would happen naturally. Picture entire industries becoming Neanderthal-dominated while others remain human territory. Construction sites, surgical suites, and technical laboratories might be primarily Neanderthal spaces, while advertising agencies, social media companies, and consulting firms would be mostly human. This isn't discrimination. It's just playing to each species' cognitive strengths. But here's where it gets really complicated. Interbreeding would create hybrid children with completely unpredictable cognitive profiles. Some might inherit the Neanderthal spatial abilities with human social learning. Others might get human innovation speed but Neanderthal precision focus. Teachers would face classrooms where every single child learns differently, not just in learning style, but in fundamental brain architecture. The solution would force society to create parallel educational systems. Neanderthal-focused schools might emphasize hands-on learning, extended practice periods, and visual spatial problem-solving. Human-focused schools would continue with rapid information processing, abstract thinking, and social collaboration. Mixed schools would need completely modular approaches, switching between teaching methods, sometimes within the same lesson. But what would classrooms look like when two brains learn side by side? These educational challenges pale in comparison to the political chaos that would follow. Picture election day when half the voters think completely differently than the other half, not politically, but biologically. Democracy as we know it becomes impossible. You can't run a fair election when one species processes social relationships through small group dynamics while another builds massive, hierarchical societies. The voting booth becomes a place where two fundamentally different concepts of leadership and community clash. Genomic data from Shagarskaya Cave show father-daughter relationships and runs of homozygosity consistent with communities of perhaps 20 to 50 individuals. Their social organization was built around female migration patterns, where women moved between groups while men stayed put. This created tight-knit family networks but severely limited the size of their political units. Meanwhile, humans developed complex societies with thousands of members, creating completely different ideas about representation and governance. The representation crisis becomes obvious when you consider population sizes. If Neanderthals naturally formed communities of maybe 50 to 100 individuals while humans built cities of 10,000 or more, how do you count votes fairly? Do you give equal weight to each person's vote, knowing that human population centers would completely dominate? Or do you create some kind of proportional system that accounts for different social structures? Either way, one species gets shortchanged. Legal rights become a nightmare to define. Neanderthals would need laws that recognize their small group social needs, maybe property rights that favor communal ownership or dispute resolution that works through extended family networks. Humans would want individual rights, private property, and court systems designed for strangers to resolve conflicts. You can't have universal human rights when humans aren't universal. Every law would need separate provisions for different species. Their Y chromosome diversity is so low, it signals very small group sizes of perhaps a few dozen people living and working together for generations. This pattern created social structures that were fundamentally incompatible with human political systems. Their patrilocal social patterns, as seen in Y chromosome studies, clash with modern human norms of nuclear family mobility. Neanderthals would probably prefer consensus-based decision-making within their small groups, while humans would push for representative democracy across large populations. Urban planning alone would create endless political conflicts. Humans would push for high-density housing, mass transit, and centralized infrastructure. Neanderthals would want scattered settlements, family compounds, and localized resource management. Social services would need completely different approaches. Humans might want large hospitals and school systems, while Neanderthals would prefer community-based care and education within extended family groups. Intermarriage makes everything more complicated. Hybrid children would have mixed learning needs that fit neither species' political systems perfectly. How would such children fit into any voting system at all? The solution would probably force society to split governance completely. Democracy wouldn't disappear, but it would become multiple parallel systems running side by side. This political fragmentation would reshape everything about how society organizes itself. Walk through a city built for two different human species, and you'd barely recognize it as human civilization. The basic infrastructure we take for granted would need to accommodate bodies that are stockier, shorter, and built completely differently than ours. Studies suggest Neanderthals had up to 20% more robust rib cages and lung capacity as cold climate adaptations. Doorways and public seating would have to be wider and lower to suit Neanderthal proportions, with furniture coming in completely different configurations. The engineering approaches would create two competing technological paths. Their sophisticated levallois technique required multi-step planning, foreshadowing engineering prowess. This focus on durability and precision would probably carry over into their modern technology. While humans might prioritize rapid innovation and planned obsolescence, Neanderthals would likely build things to last centuries. Architecture would become fundamentally split. Neanderthal buildings might emphasize robust construction with thicker walls, reinforced foundations, and modular designs that could be precisely assembled and disassembled. Their tools for domestic purposes included scrapers for processing hides, awls for creating clothing, and burins for working with wood and bone, all requiring exact measurements and careful execution. This attention to detail would probably translate into construction techniques that prioritize structural integrity over aesthetic innovation. Neanderthals built 176,000-year-old stalagmite circles deep in a French cave, showing they could handle complex spatial construction. Imagine your home built like that, with the same deliberate placement of hundreds of elements arranged in perfect circles, requiring artificial light sources brought underground. Their spatial organization skills would create architecture that emphasizes physical construction, precise arrangements, and connection to enclosed spaces. Cultural expression would split along completely different sensory lines. Neanderthals used naturally occurring pigments like red ochre and manganese oxides for symbolic purposes, transporting decorated shells from their original locations. Their art might emphasize tactile experiences, precise geometric patterns, or earth-toned color palettes that reflect their connection to natural pigments. Human art would likely continue focusing on abstract concepts, bright synthetic colors, and rapid stylistic changes. Interbreeding over thousands of years would make standardization nearly impossible. Hybrid children would inherit unpredictable combinations of physical and cognitive traits, creating a spectrum of needs that no single system could accommodate. Some might need Neanderthal-style robust engineering but human social connectivity. Others might prefer human innovation speed but require Neanderthal precision in their work environments. Society would become fundamentally modular and adaptive out of necessity. Every system, from transportation to entertainment, would need parallel versions. Movie theaters might have different seat configurations. Smartphones would come in various form factors, and even kitchen appliances would need species-specific designs. The infrastructure would become a complex web of interconnected but separate systems, each optimized for different human variants. But all this accommodation raises a deeper question about what we'd actually be accommodating. The answer lies in how this scenario would force us to confront the very foundation of human identity itself. In a world with surviving Neanderthals, the very concept of human rights becomes complex because human itself becomes plural, forcing us to completely redefine what we mean by personhood, dignity, and belonging. Historical precedent shows law evolves with new populations. This plural humanity would force another radical legal shift. We'd have to debate whether rights can be species-neutral or require species-specific protections. What's really unsettling is how this scenario exposes our current biases about intelligence, worth, and identity that we don't even realize we have. We can barely handle diversity within our own species. True interspecies coexistence would require empathy we've never achieved. Ultimately, coexisting with Neanderthals would challenge our deepest assumptions about what it means to be human and what it means to be ourselves.